My wife was supposed to pass away that day. No, wait. If I've learned anything from this whole ordeal, it's that some jerk on the internet will take anything I write in the worst possible light. When I say should, I don't wish she was dead. I mean, it's amazing that she's not. But to be completely honest, my life would probably be a lot easier if she had died. That's another thing I've learned. If people are going to quote you out of context and twist your words, you might as well just say what you mean. So, yeah, the fact that she survived the shooting means I got a lot of shit I shouldn't have. The shooting itself should have just been a failure. Or I guess it shouldn't have been. Every shooting, big or small, should motivate our officials to do something useful. But in terms of the mental institution we live in these days, this should was just an outburst. I'm not going to name the shooter. Screw that guy. His name should have died with him. We'd all be better off if we didn't give nut jobs like this the press they want. Of course, our society and our media, be it mainstream, civic, or social media, won't do that on any important level. There's no need for patience. Likewise, I'm not going to say why he did it. He could have been an incel, a white supremacist, a religious extremist, a psycho, or a jilted lover. Whatever. Regardless of what kind of asshole he was, 6 people died and 9 ended up in the hospital. A 2-year-old would never recognize his mother. A father had to watch his son die. A couple dozen people, probably more, will have nightmares for the rest of their lives. No, screw his plans. Whatever idiotic reason compelled him to shoot up a restaurant was the only thing that affected the lives of the people left behind. People like me and my wife. But like I said, nothing so remarkable had to happen for the shooting to become anything more than a blip in today's culture of sound bites and scrolling fates. People searched and eventually found something to bring this particular incident to public attention. But there was no obvious hook on which the stalkers and vultures of talking heads could hang their hats. The culture warriors found no support from either the left or the right. The death toll was not in the single digits, so there wasn't the gruesome statistical burden that would provide easy ratings. Why? Because someone found a personal angle, and that angle turned out to be the destruction of my marriage and everything that led up to it. On the day of the shoot, I was stuck on an endless Scrum stand-up, a sort of daily check-in for software development projects. A stand-up should take no more than 15 minutes. This one went into its second hour, while the project manager, product manager, and development director argued about stupid and trivial shit. Ray, one of my buddies, was looking at his phone. Hell, half of us spent that time surreptitiously scrolling through social media feeds or watching videos with the sound off, but Ray didn't even bother with that level of disguise. He simply placed his phone on the surface of his desk, switching between apps and laughing at articles, or rather laughing until he elbowed me in the ribs. "Bill," he hissed. "Bill," tearing myself away from the teaser trailer for Bloodstomp 4. "The stomping," I whispered. "What? There's been a shooting downtown." I shrugged with my palms up. "Okay, so?" He flashed the screen at me. "Is it Tracy?" His Twitter, I refuse to call him X, showed a video of a woman and a man standing inside a police court and locked in an embrace. A guy, a big muscular dude who looked vaguely familiar, and a blonde woman. Suddenly, however, she tensed up and pushed him away. Staggering away, the woman looked around with a confused and awkward expression on her face. But I had no doubt my wife of 4 years was cheating on me. It may not have come down to a kiss, but that was all I could prove. But her body language and his spoke volumes that something more had happened. The video, just a short clip, repeated from the beginning. This time I saw the backdrop where the kiss had taken place, a storefront and a mall with the windows smashed out. Police officers were going in and out, passers-by were looking away with hunted eyes, and my wife was kissing her lover. "Send me the link." Poking his finger at the screen, Ray muttered, "Shit, sorry." I nodded at him and stood up, all eyes turned to me. In several of them, I saw something I would often see in the future. The pity that people, especially men, feel for a cuckold. The leader stopped their bickering, but I didn't care. I just muttered, "Urgent. I have to go." Even as the door closed, I could hear quiet voices uttering words like wife, affair, and poor bastard. I didn't know the exact location of the mall, but it was easy enough for me to find all the information I needed as I made my way out of the office, to the elevator, and into the parking garage. Tracy hadn't called, and neither had the police. I doubted they would call since she didn't seem to be hurt. I got more details on the radio, at least as much as the local public broadcasting affiliate could give. I was angry at what the video showed me, but that wasn't the reason I was shaking like a leaf as I drove. God, my wife almost died. I was furious, yes. Hell, it felt like my marriage was going down the drain. But I still loved Tracy. I loved her for 6 years. Even if it turned out she'd cheated on me, really had fun with a guy, not just because of that kiss. I couldn't imagine hating her so much that I'd want to see her dead. The GPS navigator on my phone was leading me toward the mall, but once I was a mile away, I didn't need it anymore. There were enough police cars, news vans, helicopters overhead, and curious onlookers not to miss the place. After parking a few blocks away, I made my way through the crowd to the barricade. A police officer standing in the lot yelled at me to move farther away, though I yelled back that my wife was inside. I saw Tracy sitting on the bumper of the ambulance with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She was staring off into the distance with her fingers around a paper cup. After I shouted her name over the cop's shoulder for the 10th time, she finally looked at me. My wife got up and ran to me, tossing the blanket and cup to the ground, then swung over the barricade and threw herself into my arms. The cop, who was probably 5 seconds away from using a taser on me, reluctantly turned his attention elsewhere. I didn't care. My wife clung to me like a baby and sobbed incoherently. That's when I noticed the asshole. He was talking to the cops, but when Tracy rushed toward me, he followed her until it was clear where she was going, or rather, who she was headed to. The bastard looked like he belonged in a goddamn superhero movie, or on the cover of a magazine, one of Marvel's Chris in the Flesh. He slowed his step, then stopped when I stared at him. He grinned back, then grinned happily, then changed his expression to a wide grin and walked back toward the cops. I worried that it wasn't the last time I'd see him, but one crisis at a time. A few minutes later, Tracy and I were approached by a paramedic who apparently realized he'd mistaken his patient. "Ma'am," he tried to get her attention, but she clung tighter to me. Ma'am, I need to take you to the hospital." Tracy screamed, "No!" The first intelligible word I'd heard from her since I'd arrived. The bewildered EMT looked at me pleadingly. "Sir, this is protocol. I have to take her to the hospital." Tracy hugged me so tight it hurt and shook her head at my chest. I asked, "Was she heard?" "Not as far as I can tell, but she growled. I'm fine. Ma'am, we need to observe you. You're in shock and—" "Holy shit, asshole, I almost died." "Yes, ma'am, and I'm sorry, but my wife looked up at me, her blue eyes bloodshot and red-rimmed, and pleaded, 'Please, Bill, please, I just want to go home. I need to be with you. Please, Bill, please.'" "Sir," I stopped him. "Look, I realize you're doing your job, but she's clearly traumatized. Do you really want to make it worse?" "No, but tell me what to watch for. That's all they'll do at the hospital, right? Leave her under observation?" He realized he couldn't win this argument. Should I have sided with him? Maybe, but Tracy looked so scared and vulnerable, and I couldn't see that sending her off with a stranger would make it any better. The paramedic looked at the two of us and gave up. He had several forms to sign, and he briefly told me what to watch out for. The police had already questioned her, and once they had my contact info, the two of us were able to leave. We had to squeeze past a camera crew from a local TV station with an angry no comment, but eventually we made it back to the car. I helped her get in, then got in myself and directed us toward our house. Our house. Even then, I wondered how much longer that would be true. In the car, we didn't talk. She just stared out the window at the horizons passing by. When we hit a pothole with a loud thud, she jumped up and screamed. When I got home, I got her inside and put her under a warm shower. She wasn't seriously injured, but she had a few abrasions and a couple of small cuts. The paramedic had treated them, but her clothes were dirty, and I wanted to eliminate the possibility of infection. Besides, she needed comfort. A warm bath might be better, but I didn't want to risk her falling asleep in it. As I helped Tracy undress, her matching bra and panties set off a new batch of alarm bells in my head. Unless she was planning on doing something or someone special, she always just grabbed whatever was in her underwear drawer. Maybe that combination was random, but I doubted it. I frowned, but refrained from commenting. Adding another piece of evidence to the pile didn't change the fact that she was too numb from shock to have a coherent conversation about where, why, and with whom she'd been. But that doesn't mean I didn't ponder it. I did everything the ER doctor recommended. keeping her away from the news and the phone, talking to her softly and gently to make her as comfortable as possible. But the thought kept running through my head. She's cheating on you. Why the hell are you doing this for her? The voice back shamed me with a simple answer. She was a human being in pain. Yes, she was also my wife, but I wouldn't treat a random stranger like that, much less a loved one. I may or may not have lost my wife to another man, but I wasn't about to lose my humanity either. I slept restlessly next to her that night. Even if it hadn't been for the video and its aftermath, I wouldn't have slept well. Tracy had woken up screaming more than once, and I'd had to cradle her, rock her, and say words of love I was no longer sure of. She almost certainly lied to me. I could have done the same. In both cases, however, she was the beneficiary of those lies. In between screaming at night, I researched the divorce laws in our state. I didn't want to rush right into it, but I wanted to be prepared. We had no children, we were renting an apartment, we had only been married for 4 years, our finances had never fully aligned. The divorce could have gone as quickly and easily as we wanted it to. If we had the ability to choose, that is, to choose without the world watching us like a pack of jackals waiting for something to devour. The text messages were my first warning that not everything would go smoothly. Ray was far from the only person who saw the video and shared it with me. The messages started coming in before I even got to the crime scene barricade and didn't stop until I turned my phone off on the way home. With everything else going on, I forgot to turn it on until the next morning when I found literally hundreds of messages on it. And not just text messages. On Facebook, Messenger, Twitter, Discord, Slack, Teams, literally every communication channel that allows one person to send a message to another. There were copies of that damn video waiting for me. I relived one of the worst moments of my life over and over again as concerned people from my past contacted me to let me know that my wife was probably having fun with another guy. Most of the messages were of the hang-in-there bro type. A few messages were of the I'll help you take this bitch out to the desert type. These guys, and they were all guys, were blocked. Some, especially from her family and friends, begged me not to jump to conclusions. Among them, I learned everything I wanted to know about Chad Wilkerson, the man caught on video kissing my wife. I hated Chad. Chad had a good reason for being a big, burly, smug son of a bitch. He'd been a halfback in high school, college, and then briefly played pro ball. He'd also dated Tracy for about 5 minutes in high school. They didn't stay together long enough for him to entertain her. So claimed the many messages that came to me, but they moved in that direction until they separated at different colleges. My wife's ex-boyfriend owned his own business. He was not, however, an autocrat. His family, unlike mine, was made up of wealthy people. But, by all accounts, he was a decent boss. I found this information from one of his employees who had done a little poking around on the internet. He figured me out by going to Chad's Facebook page, where he saw that Chad had added Tracy as a friend, and then saw that Tracy was married to me. The fact that a random guy was able to figure me out so easily hinted that a real shitstorm was about to rain down on my head. When Tracy woke up around 9, there was new footage, including raw footage of the shooting itself, recorded by the restaurant security camera. I didn't want to see it. I'll never see it now. I won't describe it except to say that Tracy almost died, and Chad saved her, saved them all. He grabbed the shooter, took his gun away from him, and beat him to death. Even I couldn't deny his bravery. My wife walked around the house like a zombie. I called to make an appointment for her to see a counselor, but even with the urgency of her need, it would be a week before she could see him. We still needed to talk, but I knew nothing useful would come of it in her current state of mind. People were calling Tracy, friends, family, a few reporters. They were calling her phone, my phone, her home office number. I thought wistfully of a time when the worst I heard when I said hello was someone trying to sell me a warranty on my car. I did my best to keep her calm and stay away from the internet and TV, but it was only a matter of time before she saw something. I answered the phone and the occasional knock on our door, but that meant I couldn't keep an eye on her. So eventually she opened up a web browser to try and catch up on her reading. 15 minutes later, I found her sitting at her desk sobbing while a video of the kiss played over and over on the screen, just the passionate part, not her pushing away from him, along with details of the two of them posted on the local Facebook community page she belonged to. I'm sorry. She didn't even look at me. Tracy, we can talk about this later. No, I need to... She turned around in her office chair to face me. I didn't cheat on you. I promise. I promise. I promise. Tracy, I know it looks bad, but I didn't cheat. We... She wiped her eyes and closed them, trying to regain her composure. It's true that I dated him for a while in high school. I wasn't in love with him. It was never... We knew we had no future when we got together. It was just fun. I sighed and sat down in the vacant chair. I guess we're doing it now, I thought then. If only it were so isolated. If only this now could stay. Tracy continued, I didn't cheat on you. I didn't cheat. She looked at me pleadingly. Please believe me, I didn't cheat. Then what happened? My wife perched her lips in concern. I'd known her long enough to realize what she was saying. This was one of those he's going to be really pissed. But I might as well rip off the Band-Aid situations. Chad contacted me a few months ago, said his company was looking to expand in this market. In our town, I mean, he needed someone to help with advertising and graphic design and things like that. And he thought of me. I live here and I know what the advertising market is like. Who's on trend? And, Tracy was a freelance graphic designer and a highly sought-after one at that. This room, her home office, was our home office during the darkest days of the pandemic. Our marriage began shortly before the lockdown. We married in October 2019, 6 months before the world stopped. I knew exactly how talented and well-connected my wife was, and I was proud of it. I saw her skill and work ethic every day for nearly 3 years. Even after COVID ended, my bosses decided that the savings and rent, utilities, and the like more than made up for not being able to socialize face-to-face. Then the company was bought out, management changed, and suddenly everyone needed to go back to the office, even though the numbers showed that we were much more productive working remotely. Why didn't you tell me? She shrugged. Because he was just a guy I used to know. We dated for about a month. I didn't even think of him as an ex-boyfriend. Not really. He was just a guy, a friend from the past that I added as a friend because we had a lot of mutual friends. And then he added me as a friend, which was about a year ago. I didn't even talk to him until he jumped on me out of the blue. And you know how it is. I have meetings with clients all the time, sometimes 6 or 8 a month. It's just not, she sighed. That's all he was. A client. Tracy bit her lip again, trying to work up the courage to continue. I spoke without meaning to and sounded harsher than I should have. First, the expression on her face changed. Sadness and worry gave way to fear. Not fear of being physically assaulted. I wasn't that kind of guy, and Tracy knew it. But fear of change. Fear of loss. I'd always been a rock for her. Tracy could be flighty like any artistic type, and I had supported and protected her through the 4 years of our marriage and the 2 years we dated. In the dictionary, my picture was next to the word dependable. So what? To see her rock begin to crumble, to hear the rumble in his voice warning of an avalanche. The fear made sense. Tracy hesitantly replied, Yes at first, and please, Bill, you have to believe me. I never wanted anything to happen. I mean, nothing happened. Not really. It's the first time we've kissed since high school. But she sighed. But I did put myself in temptation. I won't lie. We sat looking at each other for a few moments before she looked away guiltily. Why? Why? You said it all started with business. Fine. It was an ex-boyfriend, albeit a minor one. You should have said something, but you didn't. I have to understand why, but I think you're being sly. If I had done the same thing, you would have been furious. Yes, but you, she sighed, you're not me. You're the calm one. Pensive. I didn't think that a self-deprecating chuckle escaped her lips. I didn't think that. Perhaps I can shorten the sentence. Agreed? Her eyes darted in my direction for a moment, but her head didn't budge. And then when we met him a few times, it became comfortable. He was a client who became a friend. Yes, we dated almost 10 years ago, but this... Honestly, I didn't think of him as an ex-boyfriend. I mean, before you were with me, you were dating a... What was her name? Cindy? For 2 months. Do you consider her a girlfriend or just someone you dated? There was a sudden growl in my voice. Don't do that. What? Don't try to think about what would happen if... Her head turned toward me, her eyes beginning to fill with panic. I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to make you realize what I was thinking. I didn't want Tracy to get upset, partly because I wanted to get through all of this in one fell swoop. and partly because as angry as I was, she didn't need another trauma on top of all the others. My tone softened, but there was still reproaching it. I'd consider her a close enough friend to tell you we're having lunch together, even if it's just on business. She nodded with annoyance. You're right. I should have done the same thing, but I didn't, and I'm sorry. My wife sighed, averting her gaze again. And then it got closer than it should have been. Never. Like I said, it was the first time he kissed me since high school, and the last time, too. I'm never going to go near him again. And I wasn't going to do anything. Then why were you wearing the same underwear? Tracy swallowed because it made me feel good in it. She closed her eyes. It wasn't for him, it was for me. I'm sorry, that's the truth. Since you're back at work, well... A half-sad smile flashed across her face as she looked at me again. You remember how it used to be when we both worked from home? I do. And even more so. Two newlyweds stuck in the same house 24/7, one working freelance and the other in an industry that expects results, but doesn't particularly care how they're achieved just so long as he meets his deadlines. We used to have fun. The week I found out I was going back to the office, she and I set up an activity, trying to fit in all the time we knew we'd miss. When I got back, I missed her, and she missed me. We texted for a while, and she would pounce on me as soon as I opened the door, but gradually things stabilized. I knew we both missed her, but I was handling it just fine. She, on the other hand, apparently wasn't. She saw the smile on my face fade as the memories were replaced with realization. Her frown echoed mine as she continued. I know you hated going back to the office, but at least you had people to talk to. I had phone calls and a few lunch meetings, but mostly I just sat in my apartment, trying to focus on work and not think about how much I wished you were here and had your desk set up for me. Or honestly, just to have lunch with me or laughing at something funny on the internet or cuddle. I missed you so much. I've been lonely, and I know you were too, but you still had those stupid new bosses. You'd come home at night totally miserable because of them, and I was going to... What? Complain that I couldn't relax with you sometimes? Oh, woe is me. I can take a nap in the middle of the day if I need a break. What kind of nonsense is that? I grumbled better than having affairs. I didn't have an affair with him. I barely kissed him. Hell, I didn't kiss him. He kissed me. I got lost in the moment, and then I pushed him away. We almost died, and he saved our lives. And he? She stopped, mouth ajar and frozen with the expression on her face from the realization that she absolutely shouldn't finish that sentence. That was fine. I can. Yes, he's a real man. I didn't say that. I didn't even think that, but he's big and strong and charming, and I've spent time. She stopped again, horror creeping across her face as she realized what she'd done. Shit, I did it, didn't I? I had an affair. He seduced me and I let it happen. Damn it, even if it was just emotion, it's, oh God, Bill, I'm sorry. The love of my life reached for me. I didn't recoil, but I didn't respond, at least not physically. My voice was empty. What would happen if you died, Tracy? I shook my head. She didn't need to hear that right now. What? The tears that had disappeared returned to her eyes, making them glassy. They hadn't fallen yet, but they very easily could have, just like she had. All they need is a push. We've come this far, I thought. We have to see this through to the end. I'd have to identify your body. I choked at the thought, my voice trailing off now and then as I continued. I would have inquired as to why you were there. Would have taken your personal belongings. Would have seen that you were wearing the same underwear and realized what it meant when you did that for me. Tracy's first tear fell in a big fat ball, leaving a glistening trail down her cheek. And then when I looked in your phone, what would I find there, Tracy? What did I find when I took all the calls, texts, and emails from people trying to contact you in the last 24 hours? What did I see in your messages to him in your emails? She looked away, deep shame red in her face. I continued. Yes, you know what's in there. And when I found out that you knew the guy you had lunch with, that you dated him, what would I think if you died? When I read how you were communicating with him, were they innocent texts, Tracy? Flirtatious? Maybe escalating to more explicit? What would they look like to a grief-stricken husband? Would I think you'd been faithful to me? Maybe, But would you have been faithful if you'd lived? I don't think so. Would you? She closed her eyes, and one shimmering track turned into many. No, no, Bill, I'm so sorry, I know, honey, I know. I stroked her arm, and she let out a short sob. But if it hadn't happened, would you be sorry then? Or would you have regretted only after you'd gone too far? The short sob turned into a string of sob as I pulled her to me. It hurts, Tracy. I know you're hurting right now a lot more than I am. But it hurts me too. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I'll never be so stupid again. My wife's head rested against my shoulder, her body shaking as she tried to get the words out. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to make promises I couldn't keep. Instead, I just hugged her tighter, felt her warmth on my body, and tried to remember the love I had for her. This proved to be easy. However, when I began to look for the former trust in her, it dried up. Yes, I could believe she was just being stupid. I could believe that she would never do it again. But I was also sure that it was only chance and tragedy that had prevented her emotional affair from escalating into a physical one. Maybe we could have survived, or maybe we wouldn't. I know she changed a lot in those few minutes when she almost died and in the days that followed. But chance and tragedy didn't end us, nor did the fickle flavors of dopamine addiction to the internet. They would take the marriage we both hoped to fix and tear it apart. For the rest of the day, we kept the computers and phones turned off. She finally realized why I had tried so hard to keep her away from them. The TV was tuned to Netflix or Hulu, and we watched silly comedies or romantic movies. No action movies, no horror, no drama. They no longer held the same fascination as the day before. Our meal was from DoorDash, and we tipped the driver well for having to dodge the news crews looking for us. The well-dressed buzzards got a stern no comment when they finally found our door. The next morning, she was making breakfast and I was making coffee, and then we discovered that while we may have been ready to move on, no one else was. I opened my laptop and discovered that the story hadn't just gotten legs, it had grown wings. A story with a perfectly deranged man turned into a novel with little resemblance to the truth. We disconnected from the world and reconnected with each other, but the internet never sleeps. In 48 hours, the story changed and changed again. First came the traditional media. Local news outlets picked up the shooting story and passed it on to the TV networks. It should have died right then and there as just another minor tragedy that didn't deserve thoughts and prayers or angry rhetoric. There wasn't much news that day, however, and the local stations had already primed the pump by getting footage of Chad kissing my wife. Not the whole thing, of course. The versions posted on social media by the time the affiliate got around to finding them were mostly cropped, with Chad and Tracy locked in a passionate embrace rather than her pushing him away. Within the first 24 hours, the phrase, "Love Islands," had taken hold on the airwaves. People seized on the idea. The only point of hope in the midst of a senseless shooting, comparing it to a young couple who met shortly before the shooting at a Las Vegas concert. You know the picture. The man lying on top of the woman, covering her in the middle of the street. Hours later, people reached out to them, demanding that they date, get married, have children. Their story had a happy ending, but they were free and single. Tracy wasn't. Chad was a public figure, owner of a small but profitable company. I never saw him again, and I don't think Tracy did either, but he already had someone doing his PR. They pounced on the chance for free publicity. Within the first 36 hours he appeared on Fox, he was introduced as an American hero, a shining example in their view of the tough take-no-prisoners man who built this country. When asked about Tracy, he smirked and said, "A gentleman doesn't kiss and tell." God, what an absolute asshole. However, the audience ate it up. This part of the narrative solidified early on. Chad is the hero. Chad, the former NFL business owner who single-handedly stopped a madman by snatching his gun from him while others looked on in fear. His story had all the elements necessary to create a legend. In frontier times, perhaps he would have joined Johnny Appleseed and Paul Bunyan in the pantheon of folk heroes. But this is the 21st century, and apparently someone at one of the various vats decided it was time for a revival of early 2010 AS memes like Unlucky Brian, Scumbag Steve, and Two-Tide Girl. Now Chipotle Chad has joined their ranks. When memes about Chipotle Chad first appeared, they were aimed at creating a mythical tough guy image that Fox and its PR team came up with. The background image was taken from his Instagram. A Chad with perfect hair, 2-day stubble, and a stoic expression gazing off into the distance from a mountaintop. Early jokes tended to repeat old Chuck Norris jokes from the outs. Apparently, someone really wanted to get nostalgic. The bastard even used some of them in his ad campaigns that same year. The mainstream media hyped the story a day or two later. Some political gaffe by a would-be candidate swept her off center stage, then a scandal between two celebrities I'd never heard of sent her into the orchestra pit. Tracy and I held our breath. We hid in our apartment for most of the week, hoping things would just die down. We both knew that the fame the internet wanted to give us was 99% curse and 1% blessing, and we hoped we could quietly disappear before that happened. Then someone really harassed Tracy. They found out where she worked and lived, as well as her friends, family, co-workers, email address, social media accounts, phone number, and of course her marital status. This was the moment our lives started to turn to shit, even more so than the shooting itself or the revelation of my wife's emotional affair. Up until that point, no one could come up with a meme for Tracy. But once the professional trolls found out she was married, they came up with a great trend: two-faced Tracy. Like Chipotle Chad, the iconic two-timing Tracy image also came from Instagram. In the image, she's sitting at a table and gazing rapturously at a handsome man sitting on one side of her while I'm digging through my phone looking like a fool on the other. It didn't matter that the man in the picture was her gay cousin, whom she hadn't seen in 2 years, and that I was frantically trying to get news about my father, who had been in a car accident. The truth didn't matter. All that mattered was that the audience took the picture and took it as follows: a woman blatantly ignoring her husband while flirting with another man. 4 days after the 5:31 a.m. shooting, I was called an asshole on Twitter for the first time, but it was far from the last. I didn't know the man. Well, probably anyway. None of these platforms check who writes on them. Ekid_consplitter_XX didn't seem like someone I would willingly spend time with. He was just some weirdo looking to mess with someone who was already having a bad time in life. The kind of low-level sociopath predicted by Gabriel's big internet theory for chumps. Normal person consequences plus audience equals sign total chump. With my baptism as Chuck the Asshole, the trifida of new image macros was complete. Frankly, I'm grateful to those who chose to rhyme rather than use my real name. The meme didn't get as fast as Chad and Tracy, but it had a certain longevity that neither of them had. I think the image of a droopy nerd in glasses ignoring his gorgeous wife in favor of his phone has caused a certain itch among those who want to communicate using slogans pasted on stolen photos. Within a day of doxing, new memes about Chipotle Chad began to appear. One of them read, "Beats your wife, saves her life." Chad has a PR firm, however, and they turned that pile of straw covered in shit into even more gold. After all, what's more manly than a jock stealing a nerd's woman? Tracy became famous very quickly. She was a gorgeous woman, and you couldn't say that men didn't look at her wherever she went. I always thought I'd punched above my weight by getting her, and the internet happily confirmed that suspicion. The frustrated housewives and their successors who made Twilight such a hit decades ago were still lurking in the shadows, waiting for a new love triangle to distract them. Now they had a real one, at least in their imaginations, and a whole new section of the internet joined in to beat the shit out of our marriage. People were literally writing fan fiction about us for crying out loud. I think it's a sign of the times. Team Chad had a much bigger following than Team Bill. My wife was doing her best to relay my fears, but she was about to cheat on me. Our brief attempt to reunite was cut short by the time we spent hiding in our apartment, frantically checking various screens and dreaming of turning invisible. Now all my doubts and anxieties were amplified every time I looked on the internet. We tried seeing a counselor, but that too was jeopardized by our newfound notoriety. Tracy and I saw several therapists, but they decided that the attention we were attracting would interfere with their work. Eventually, we found one who agreed to take us on, but... oh, man. She seemed strangely hostile to me in the first session. Even Tracy noticed it. Not literally, but she was against me in almost everything. In the second session, she started emphasizing where I might have led Tracy astray while downplaying what she had done. Neither of us were very happy with her doing this, and Tracy started fighting for me in protest. The evening after that session, I decided to look up the kind counselor's personal Facebook page. You've probably already guessed where that leads. It turns out she was on Team Chad to the end and wanted to cut in on her favorite soap opera. Unprofessional, unethical, even immoral? Sure, but so what? We weren't real people, were we? We were just characters in her favorite drama. After that, we kind of stopped looking for outside help. Tracy soon found her graphic design business flooded with new inquiries. Most of them came from scammers, but a few turned out to be legitimate. Internet fame can be a double-edged sword, but it can also be lucrative if you survive it. After a few weeks, she hired a virtual assistant to sort them all out. So, yes, the internet thought my wife was a whore, and she had to deal with more than one stalker. But she sure as hell made money off her notoriety. And me? Not so much. My return to work sucked. One or more of my coworkers taped my office with various memes. No one admitted to it, and my manager helped remove them, but there was a little smirk on his face the whole time. New memes appeared daily and sometimes more frequently. If I left for lunch, memes. Needed to get my car serviced, more memes. Sick day? Oh, you better believe there were memes. I knew it wasn't the development staff doing it, or at least not my direct coworkers. Hell, some of them took pictures of salespeople, managers, admins, and other people posting memes in my cube. But it didn't matter. I tried contacting HR claiming a hostile work environment, but I got no help there. This didn't surprise me. Heck, one of the HR people had been photographed doing this activity. We lived in a work-for-hire state, and I worked for a shitty company. Without an attorney, I had no chance of getting them to change their views. And with an attorney, I would have been fired for some nonsense reason unrelated to a hostile work environment. I might eventually get a refund, but it wouldn't help in the short term. Each day, I came home more and more discouraged. Tracy tried to help by trying to comfort me with words, displays of affection, and physical proximity. Unfortunately, after seeing her face on my desk every day with mocking comments printed on it, I couldn't help but have warm feelings for her. It didn't help that her nightmares got worse as time went on. Yes, they were horrible for her, and I tried to be a loving and supportive husband, but it meant I got less sleep, which made everything less tolerable. The entire internet, with the exception of Team Chad and Team Bill's shippers, stopped caring so much in a matter of weeks. But our memes persisted. Yes, over time they'd become somewhat detached from their original context, but my wife was still literally the poster child for openly cheating wives, and I was still the poster child for oblivious cuckolding husbands. I hated my job more than ever, but the search for a new one led to dead end after dead end. In the cases where I managed to get an interview, about half the time they just wanted a picture with Chuck the cuckold, and the other half they immediately stopped the process when they realized who I was. Everyone in the tech space knew what kind of shit could happen if they hired me. Hell, most of us had engaged in this kind of trolling stupidity when we were younger. Our relationship was slowly deteriorating before our eyes. My situation swapped with my wife's, and I became an isolated person with few friends and no outlet. She had more things to do than she could handle, and this alleviated the loneliness that plagued her before, but at the same time further distanced us from each other. Even if it hadn't been for two events that precipitated the destruction of our marriage, I don't know how we would have managed to stay together. The first one I probably could have foreseen. No, I know I could have. A group of guys from a neighboring school found out that Chuck Kunn worked at the local office and found it extraordinarily amusing to hit on me as I walked in and out of the building. Never mind, I figured they'd eventually get sick of it. For 2 or 3 weeks, I just ignored their taunts as I walked from my car to the building. I knew what they were filming. I had already seen the video on TikTok. They weren't just doing it for the sake of views. Again, nothing special? But one day they started throwing not only insults, but rocks. I turned towards them, roared with rage as blood flowed from my wound on my cheek. They ran away. I washed the cut, put a Band-Aid on it, and hoped that would be the end of it. I considered calling the police, but the development team had gone on break and I was too busy to bother. By lunchtime, I had become a trending topic on Twitter. Chockwad attacks people. By 3 p.m., I was in the office with my boss, his boss, and the HR rep. Long story short, they fired me. They told me that we live in such a state, I replied that I would sue them for creating a hostile work environment. We had another long altercation. Voices were raised, threats were made. Finally, after some quiet whispering on their part, they offered me 3 months severance pay, all my vacation and sick leave, a letter of recommendation, and the right to unemployment benefits if I signed an NDA. I spoke to my attorney, and he advised me to sign the agreement and move on with my life. Getting on with life would be a good thing. That's not what happened, but it would have been nice. A new wave of ridicule and anger came at me from almost every conceivable direction. Fortunately, online outrage burns out quickly, and within days they found someone else to be the new face. Whatever it was, they thought made me the bad guy, but it was another source of irritation for me when I didn't need it at all. The local job market certainly didn't get any better when I went from internet buffoon to raving lunatic. Yes, the video eventually surfaced, but the police didn't want to press charges. Goddamn useless assholes. You'd think staying home with Tracy would give us a chance to rebuild our relationship. You'd be wrong. The distance between us only widened when I got underfoot. She didn't say it outright, but her feelings about it were obvious. It used to be fun for the two of us to sit around the apartment, but now it was distracting her as she tried to handle her business. Worse, I was spending my time in a perpetual bad mood, unable to find a job and bored as hell. Tracy tried to sympathize, but as a freelancer she had to strike while it was hot. Never mind that she had red hot that iron, nearly burning our marriage. From that point on, things went downhill. I grew increasingly resentful of her, not so much because of her success, but because it was achieved at my expense. She became less and less responsive as I became more and more depressed. I started working odd hours to avoid her. She began to ridicule my sulking. Weeks of bickering and bickering began the final act, and my God, it was pretty awesome. The night we reached the point of no return, Tracy and I sat on the couch as far away from each other as we could get. She and I hadn't had anything for weeks, and we had pretty much given up on any real affection for each other. Half the time I slept on the couch because we were so tired of each other by then. We never said exactly what it was that was bugging us. We managed to keep our relationship in check to avoid such frankness. But we both knew. She won the coin toss for the remote, and I found myself forced to watch some ridiculous Korean drama. I, on the other hand, was mostly staring at my phone, reading a book. We both looked up from our screens when someone knocked on our door. Shrugging, I stood up and opened it. Have you ever seen a SWAT team in person? Like a SWAT team with a whole butt? I wouldn't advise it, especially when you can see that some of them are frustrated that they can't point guns at you. But I didn't pee my pants. Come to me. Can I help you? The older cop asked. Mr. Kowalski? Bill Kowalski? Yes? I didn't mean for it to sound like a question or a squeak, but you know the drill. Lots of cops with loaded rifles. He crammed his neck and looked at Tracy as she came up behind him. Tracy Kowalski? Yes? We got a report of hostages being taken at this address. Are you okay, ma'am? Tracy gasped. What? No, we're fine. I'm fine. We were just watching TV. As it turned out, the SWAT team had thankfully exercised some restraint. They used a small, flexible fiber-optic camera slipped between the door and the jamb to check out the situation. Thank goodness we were watching TV in the living room, or they would have broken down the door and thrown flares at it. At least if the accounts of other people who were attacked are to be believed. That is, those who survived. Some dude, unbeknownst to me, called 911, identified himself as a neighbor and said I killed our non-existent children and was holding Tracy hostage. Why? Probably for fun. Or maybe because they wanted me dead. Several people retained a keen interest in the love triangle they'd constructed in their imaginations. And it was entirely possible that someone on Chad's team wanted me out of the way so he and Tracy could be together. I'd given up trying to understand the thought process of such people. Whatever the reason, the outcome would still please Chad's team. Tracy and I got on it almost as soon as the cops left. It was a wonder they didn't come back 15 minutes later to check on the yelling. I'm done. I'm goddamn done with all of this, Tracy moaned, sitting on the couch and wrapping her arms around her head. You're done? Are you done with you? I almost got shot. I know. I'm sorry. I rolled my eyes. Oh, well, it gets better then, doesn't it? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. When is your sorry going to turn into something that actually fixes this damn shit you've turned our lives into? Don't blame it on me. It wasn't me. Furious, I snapped back. You were going to have fun with another guy. Yeah, wrong time, wrong place, but you didn't have one reason to be in that place. I almost died. I snorted. And that justifies everything leading up to that moment. That you almost died means I have to put up with the fact that you lied beforehand. That you met this asshole without telling me and fell for his bullshit. That I have to look past all that and everything that's happened since. For God's sake, Tracy, you did this to us. You did all of this to us. All I did was be a good husband, and all you did in return was ruin my life. And there it was, the phrase I never uttered. God, it felt so good to spit it out, like cauterizing a boil. Tracy narrowed her eyes angrily. Okay, Chuck. No, she didn't. Stunned, I spat out. What the hell did you just say? You heard me. You were sitting on that couch feeling sorry for yourself because you got fired because the internet thinks you're an asshole because she made a sound of disgust. Whatever. Because my wife wanted to have fun with another man? That's why Tracy. That's why they put that damn nickname on me. But hey, at least yours is accurate to handed. Her eyes blazed. I told you I never back off, just my shoulders slumped. Just back off, Tracy. You did this to us, all of it. You were bored and lonely. You let yourself be seduced. You kissed Chad. God, Tracy, you almost died, and I hate that. But now you almost killed me, too. She opened her mouth to speak, but I ignored her attempt. Honestly, I'm serious. Screw you. Screw this whole thing. I'm out of here. And what does that mean? For the first time since I'd been fired, I saw real remorse in her eyes. Remorse and fear, not of the man with a gun, but of what our lives had become. Fear of the next words that would come out of my mouth. I wanted divorce. It was over, except for the screaming, and there was a lot of screaming. By the end of the night, there were a lot of tears. We hugged each other as we fell asleep on the couch, and she was still begging me to change my mind. I didn't hate her. Hell, I loved her. That was the worst part. But I couldn't take it anymore. What she'd done to us and what she'd done to me. Truthfully, none of what followed her stupidity was her fault. Not the memes. Not the crazies taking our lives as one of her romantic dramas. Not the cops at our door. Not directly. She couldn't have foreseen any of this when she met her former high school boyfriend for lunch that day. But then, no snowflake is responsible for an avalanche either. The next day, we canceled the lease. It turned out that the complex would gladly waive the fee if the tenants who brought the damn SWAT team to their door would just quietly leave. We used the last week in the apartment to lay out our stuff and sign the appropriate forms. She tried to use it to get me to stay, blowing every tool at her disposal. None of them changed my mind. When I turned her down on a whatever I want, no strings attached basis, she finally realized it was over. We left the keys at the rental office and then went to our cars. Tracy looked at me with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry, Bill. I know that. I know you're tired of hearing this, but it's the truth. I'm sorry for what I did. I love you. I silently said goodbye to my unwilling tormentor, kissing her on the forehead, then got in my car and drove until she was out of sight. It was almost 3 years before I saw Tracy again. But first, I heard her. I'd recognize that voice anywhere, especially when the woman it belonged to started to get angry. The lady chewing out the airline rep definitely fit that definition. What do you mean, canceled? What about the next flight? The bemused employee tried to calm her down. I'm sorry, ma'am, but there was a mechanical problem on your flight and the next flight is full. We can put you on one. Looks like tomorrow afternoon, after lunch. That's just ridiculous. What about the morning flights? You say they're all filled? Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. But because of the pilot strike, and I watched from a distance. I knew the voice, of course, but from behind, the woman wielding it like a club seemed almost unfamiliar to me. Her height and build were appropriate. Maybe a little heavier than I'd last seen her, but not by much. However, my possible ex-wife, who was now turning away from the cash register in disgust, had shoulder-length black hair with bangs instead of long blonde hair and contact lenses instead of glasses. And she wasn't dressed in the bohemian boutique yogi mom clothes that Tracy had worn almost uniformly during our marriage, but in a sensible conservative business suit with a skirt. But no. This woman was Tracy, and she hadn't noticed me yet, or maybe she had, but she just didn't recognize me. I had changed too. I stepped out of the line we'd both been waiting in and followed her feet as she staggered frantically through the terminal. When the woman stopped, I tapped her on the shoulder. She turned around and almost shrieked, "What?" Then she saw me, really saw me. I thought she was going to cry when I smiled warmly and said, "Hi, Trace. Be Bill? William now." You know, because I shrugged, because she nodded, still stunned. Still, God's still so gorgeous. Different, but gorgeous. "Liz, my name is Elizabeth now." I smiled again, trying to sound friendly. Despite what had happened, I still cared about her. A middle name. Good choice. Tracy reached out and stroked my face, then grinned. "You grew a beard. Where are your glasses?" "Lossy." And yes, the beard. "I've always wanted to try it, but you never liked them." She laughed. "I still don't like them." But Tracy, "No, Liz," shook her head to one side and grinned. "But it's not as bad as I thought it would be." I joined in her laughter. "High praise indeed." "What?" A man running past pushed me. We grabbed our bags and stepped aside. "What are you doing here?" "Trying to get home. The flight to Dallas was canceled and they won't be arriving tomorrow afternoon. I've been living out of a suitcase for a week now and I'm sick of it." She shook her head. "But I guess one more night in a hotel won't kill me. How about you?" "Same thing. You live in Dallas now?" "Yeah." Her smile grew brighter. "You too?" "For about 2 years. I just got back from a conference and I'd like to get home soon too." "Well, that's not going to happen today." "No, I suppose, A quick glance at the clock showed the time as 5:20. You know, it's only a 4-hour drive. I could rent a car. I was suddenly seized with curiosity. What had happened to her? Why did she look like that? Was she happy? And how much did I really want to know one way or the other? The devil and the angel on my shoulder were arguing with each other. "I don't know which one won, but if I were to have one, would you want to?" "Yes." Her grin turned embarrassed. "I mean, yeah, that sounds good. My company can foot the bill. Then we should probably hurry up. I can't imagine we'll be the only ones to think of it." Elizabeth and I headed almost jogging toward the rental car lot, trying to find something decent size before the lot was full. We settled on an SUV. More expensive than I would have chosen, but her corporate card paid for it. Corporate card. I never thought I'd see her with one. "Do you want to drive the first half or the second half?" she asked as we stowed our stuff in the trunk. "I'll take the first one. And you relax." Such a gentleman. Her sarcastic smile still had the same effect on me years later. Hell, I didn't realize how much I missed her. Doubts began to creep in about the sanity of it all, and she saw the flutter on my face. "Hi, B. William, it's okay if you don't." I shook my head. No, I want to. I'd love to catch up. Come on, let's hit the road." We didn't talk much as we made our way through Houston's crazy rush hour traffic, mostly just phrases like "watch out" and "damn idiot." You know, the usual Texas talk while driving. But here we were, out of the city limits and suburbs, putting the car on cruise control and heading north on I-45. I had only been able to absorb superficial information before, but now I had time for details. As the miles flew by in relative silence, I furtively glanced at my ex-wife. Liz dressed mostly conservatively, but I could see small hints of Tracianer. A couple of new ear piercings, hip-styled glasses, a choice of black hair color instead of a more subdued one. But then I saw a detail I was completely unprepared for, a simple bracelet on the ring finger of her left hand. My heart sank a little. I felt foolish. Surely someone must have grabbed her. I had relinquished all claim to her, and it didn't surprise me. I told myself I shouldn't fall into melancholy, but I did. "Penny for your thoughts?" She looked at me inquisitively. "Just trying to ignore how much it hurts to see you move away. You just look so different." "Oh, Liz lowered her gaze and embarrassment, and then twirled a strand of hair nervously. Such a familiar movement, yet completely overthought. Echoes of memories flashed through my mind. Flirting with a girl at the bar as I tried to get her phone number, not knowing she was feeling as excited as I was, and her embarrassment growing along with my shocked silence. My new bride wondering, hopefully, if our finances could support an independent business. My frustrated ex realizing that the last straw had broken the camel's back. She smiled at me, eyes downcast with embarrassment. "Everyone. Well, they changed after you left. Not right away, but not for too long. Maybe 6 months later?" The initial fame sort of faded, and I was left with, well, Two-Faced Tracy, or her reputation anyway. New clients started to dry up. Old clients started arguing about their accounts, wondering if I was cheating them. Business. She sighed loudly. I gave it up. Oh shit, really, I'm so sorry. Liz shook her head. Went back to corporate America. That first job didn't last long. Tears covered her eyes as she looked at me full in the face. Will, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how bad it could be. You told me, but I didn't realize how awful it was for you with your shitty coworkers. I found the printed meme in my office only minutes before I was ready to cry. Plus the whispers, the women in the office avoiding me, the assholes hitting on me, thinking I was easy. She ran her sleeve over her face. I only ended up staying there for 4 months. Then I took a month off, got a makeover, and she waved a hand at herself. Elizabeth, the moody corporate coward. She leaned over and muttered, Thank you. God, Will, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I've been such a bitch about everything, and no, I was. Stop it. I mean, I took a deep breath watching the flat, grassy landscape float by outside the window. Yeah, you could have been more understanding. I needed your support, but I don't know if I would have accepted it. I blamed you for everything back then. I deserved it. In part, yes. Maybe even most of it, but not all of it. There were so many things that I swallowed and shook my head. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter now. My hand dropped as I remembered the tape that marked her as a stranger. Then I nodded in her direction. I mean, you're happy now, right? I've moved on and you've moved on. Liz furrowed her eyebrows, looking at me incomprehensibly. Then her mouth and eyes widened in surprise. What? No. 2. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her lower her gaze to her hands and remove her ring. No, I'm not married. I just wear it so I don't get hit on while traveling. Dating wasn't a priority. Oh. I couldn't think of anything else to add. My brain was busy running this new revelation through my head. Dating wasn't a priority. What does that mean? She muttered quietly. You say you've already stepped away from the business? Mentally bringing myself back to the here and now, I muttered, yes, I have. I frowned. After we broke up, I reinvented myself, I guess. Before everything happened, I was trying to find a new job, and after, well, I couldn't find anything. You know what happened there. Again, I'm sorry. I gestured with my hand to show her to stop apologizing. Things didn't go well for me on that front, but I talked to Ray, you know, my former coworker, and he suggested I try freelancing for a while. Picking up short-term orders on Upwork, Fiverr, and things like that, sometimes signed long-term contracts where I could work from home. Employers only see your full name on these sites after they hire you, and with a beard, no glasses, a different haircut, and my legal name instead of Bill. No one ever realized who I was, and if they did, at least they didn't say anything. I didn't have. I chuckled softly. Well, my old home exercises were no longer available, so I started going to the gym. At the gym, no one bothers you if you're just a guy trying to work out on his own. I got myself in shape that I know I would have missed out on. Hell, since I told her so much, I might as well get on with it. I feel better after all of this. I know I'll never be as big and strong as Chad, but I also know I let myself get down, and I've always wondered if that was part of why. No, don't do that, William Kowalski. You were 10 times better than he was. You were a good and handsome man, and you loved me, and I, Liz, was seething with resentment apparently directed at herself. When I think about how I allowed myself to be seduced, no, when I left myself open to seduction, that was my fault. He seduced me, yes, but I made myself vulnerable to him. You didn't do anything wrong. Nothing. Do you understand? I loved you, but I was too stupid to cherish it the way I should have. To cherish you the way I should have. She looked out the window. Such a damn idiot. I nodded to myself, then said softly, Thank you. Clearing my throat, I continued my story, but I found that I enjoyed it, just being able to relax and focus on weights or running. I started exercising for myself, not out of any sense of inadequacy or anything. Then my mom got sick, and I moved back to Dallas to be near her. To prosper, actually. Liz turned to me with a bright smile. Hey, I'm in Salina. Wait, your mom, is she okay? Yeah, she's fine now. The cancer went into remission and hasn't come back since. But low cost of living. A little anonymity. I shrugged. I figured I might as well stay. She had cancer? Oh my God. I'm so sorry. I hadn't heard about it, or I would have. She frowned. I guess I wouldn't have done anything. Who wants to hear about an ex-daughter-in-law who ruined their son's life? I snorted. Mom loved you. Hell, she still loves you now. I guarantee she'd want to hear it from you. Really? That fragile, hopeful tone in her voice hurt my heart. I realized where she was coming from. Isolation does that to you, makes you crave any contact that seems safe. I'd suffered from it for quite some time, and I hated to see her do the same. Yeah, really. A tiny beep and a new indicator light on the dashboard informed me that it was time to stop. Looking over the horizon, I saw a convenient station at the next exit. We need to get gas. Want a snack or something? I'll get them while you get gas. I need to go to the bathroom anyway. 10 minutes and a couple trips to the restroom later, we were back in the car. The gas station was at a convenient halfway point, so Liz took over driving duties while I dug through the plastic bag of her groceries. Water bottles for both of us, Chex Mix for her as expected, and a moon pie for me. Glancing over, she saw me eyeing her wearily and frowned. Oh, shit. I forgot you're eating healthier foods now. I'm sorry, it didn't even occur to me. The wrapper came off instantly, and I made unintelligible noises as I ate the first bite. Oh my God, I haven't had one of these in like 2 years. Liz grinned, feeling relieved. They were always your favorite on road trips, and they are now. I just haven't been taking many road trips lately. There's no real reason to. The best part is the company, and, well, there's not much company these days. She threw me a fearful and credulous look. Really? You're pretty damn handsome right now. I mean, you were before, but shit, I'm sorry. You know what I mean? Smash the Hulk? My ex had to stop laughing before replying. Yeah, asshole. You should fight them off with a stick. I shrugged. For a while, yeah, I did. But then it became such a hassle. Not fighting them off, but everything that happened afterward. Oh, you're not on social media? Why? Oh, or wait, why do I know your name? And your face is so familiar. Those who were excited about it really sucked. I could almost see them thinking, I wonder if he's still a sucker. Tell me about it. I literally had one guy say to me after I explained I wasn't interested in him, Hell, you and I both know you're a slut. Why are you playing hard to get, asshole, bitches? We drank and snacked in silence while she drove, and it went on like that for a long time until we were outside of Dallas. Then Liz giggled softly. What? She looked at me and smirked. I was just remembering our first trip when you wanted me to meet your family. I hesitated and blushed at the memory of the first time she'd been rude to me on the road. It made her laugh out loud. I see you did too. That's a good memory. We both laughed then, but after that, the mood in the car became melancholy. It is. It was a good time. We had a great time together. Elizabeth turned to face the road again, snorted, and simply replied, Yeah. Silence took over us again. I felt like I needed to say something. More than that, I felt she needed to hear something. Liz? What? I'm sorry, too. Her gaze darted to me, then back to the road. God, for what? For not being stronger, I guess. For not being able to go through things with you. For better or worse, right? But I couldn't stick with it. And I regret that. My ex-wife frowned, not looking at me. I cheated on you, or I would have cheated on you. And I was a real bitch at the end. Yes, you were. When I didn't continue, Tracy looked over again and saw me grinning, then snorted. As whole. Apology accepted. A pause. Really, I mean it. But you don't owe me that. I messed up our lives. I messed up my life. I messed up your life. I interrupted quietly. Save the lives of 30 people. What? Not directly, I mean, you didn't want to do it, but you did. Just like you didn't want to turn our lives upside down, turn us into memes, or have SWAT show up in our living room. But you did it anyway. Will. Just listen, okay? I sighed. It's been 3 years, Liz, and I've had a lot of time to think about it. A lot has happened since we broke up. All the things we talked about, freelancing, getting back into shape, changing my name and appearance, my mom's cancer, all of it. Some things we hadn't talked about either. And then one night after a bad date with some dumb girl a friend was trying to set me up with, I needed something, some good reason to keep going. I inhaled deeply through my nose and exhaled slowly. So I sat down and wrote down everything that happened. Tried to make sense of it all, I guess. You know me. I'm not one to believe that everything happens for a reason, or at least not supernaturally. A follows B and B follows C, but there's no gratuitous reason that makes them happen. But when I started making my list, I looked at the things that happened because of what you did. All the bad things, yes. But I also ran the videotape of the shooting through my head. The lunch break was in full swing and the place was packed. Chad wouldn't have been there if you and he hadn't gotten close enough to have a friendly lunch. I can't imagine anyone in attendance being able to get to that asshole fast enough. And certainly no one could have snatched the gun out of his hands and beaten him to death with it. Elizabeth went completely quiet, barely breathing as I spoke. Her eyes were fixed on the road, but I knew her attention was on my voice as I continued. Like I said, everything doesn't happen by some divine design. If it was, other people wouldn't be dead either. Hell, the guy probably would have gotten the help he needed before he even got to this point, if we had someone watching out for us. But it happened the way it did. And because of that, dozens of people at least went home to their families that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And yes, Chad got his moment in the sun, but then all that got ruined too. I chuckled, remembering the video of him being escorted out of his office. His PR team was top-notch, but his corporate lawyers? Not so much. A Mexican restaurant sent him a demand to stop using their name and their advertising and was told he could ignore it. That led to a lawsuit which led to discovery, which led to new revelations. A whole list of other crap that the great American manly hero hadn't bothered or didn't know how to purge from his cloud vault. Liz shuddered and nodded. Yeah, God, I can't believe it, she sighed. I can't believe how easily I was attracted to him. He's had a lot of practice with other women. Anyway, that's another plus. He didn't go any farther with you than he did with you. Regardless of you and me, well, you've seen some things, I'm sure. I'm glad it didn't happen to you. But maybe it would have if you two hadn't been around that day. And he would have continued to get away with it, covering himself with his family's money and his fame. But everything that happened to you? Yeah, it sucked. I'm not going to lie. But when you compare that to the lives of the people who survived and the fact that there's a predator sitting in jail who otherwise would never have been put there, how selfish do I have to be to say, oh, I'm the only one who really matters here? Boo, damn, who? I nodded at the road. Don't miss your exit. She pulled into the junction and I paused to give her time to make sense of the utterly ridiculous mess that is the high five. Once our rented Hulk shifted back and forth across the lanes and we pulled onto 635 and then onto the toll highway, I got back to my story. Even the worst thing for me was, well, it didn't lead to wine and roses, but I quit that horrible job and started freelancing. I'm very happy with my job now, and I would never have done it if we hadn't broken up. I just wouldn't have put myself out there. Without that flexibility, I wouldn't have been able to come home to take care of my mom either. Wouldn't have gotten in shape. Wouldn't have done, well, none of the things I do. And yeah, it was lonely sometimes, but I'm starting to make friends again. Real friends I can tell the whole story to. She smiled, a pained grimace that hinted at inner turmoil. That's good. I'm really happy for you. I watched her as she tried to keep her cool. I'm sorry if I think maybe you're not doing so well. She shook her head, her voice trailing off. No, not really. I've been trying to find the positives in my life, but I haven't been successful. You're probably right, though. The smile grew a little bolder. All those people lived. Chad went to prison. And you're doing well. She nodded to herself. Yeah, you're right. The misfortune of one or even two people, it can't compare to this. It sucks, but it can't. I just want to... Shit, Will. I just want it to be different. For this whole thing to be different, I'm glad you're looking at it with a positive outlook. But I'll never stop regretting what I did to you. Or for ruining our marriage. Or for all of it. Maybe it's selfish, but I just feel so awful about what I did. By then, Liz had almost completely lost control of the temper and tone of her voice, but I could hear the through note of self-loathing in all her words. Yes, she wasn't doing well. Despite what she'd done to me, to herself, and to our marriage, I didn't want this kind of pain for her. Even if I hadn't cared for her, and I did, she'd spent 3 years being battered both by complete strangers and her own guilt. She needed to hear the words. I forgive you. Her eyes darted to me. What? I forgive you, Tracy. Liz, shit, I'm sorry, Stop! Tracy's fine. Tracy's always okay for you. She wheezed again. Are you serious? You forgive me? Yes, I forgive you. Liz stood in complete silence for almost a minute, then whispered, "Thank you." I looked out the window but saw her reflection in the night twilight. My ex-wife twirled her hair again, that nervous gesture that had meant so much during our time together. I hoped it meant something specific now, but I couldn't be sure. The toll highway took us north of Dallas. We turned onto 380, then on to Preston and further north. By then, the silence had become tense but not awkward. I knew what I wanted to say. I think she did too, but neither of us wanted to speak first and make a mistake. We had less and less time left, however, so I broke the détente. Another good thing came out of this. Liz looked back at me, trying to hide an expression of hope. "I like your hair. Very Wednesday Addams-esque." She giggled, wiping a tear from her eye that we could both pretend the laughter had gotten there. I wanted to do a Jessica Jones impersonation, but okay, oh, my bad. Fortune favors the bold, I thought. "Do you want to grab coffee sometime? I'd like to socialize some more." Yes, I'd love to." Liz smiled broadly. The tension between us had subsided. "Actually, I'd love to." "Okay, turn right here." A few turns led us through a quiet neighborhood and to my house, a modest starter home. We exchanged license plates and agreed to meet later that week, whereupon I got out of the SUV and retrieved my luggage from the trunk. Liz smiled and waved at me as I opened the front door and stepped inside, and I returned the favor. However, something in her facial expression made me hesitate before I closed the door. I tossed my bags on the floor in the hallway and walked back to the car, peering out the driver's side window. Liz tried to push me away, but I saw the concerned look on her face and asked her to open the window. She nodded, trying to pull herself together as the window slowly rolled down and then tried to feign nonchalance. "Did you forget something?" Honestly, the crack in her mask widened. "What's going on? Are you okay?" "I'm fine." A small, maniacal laugh escaped her lips. "I'm fine, just tired. You know, long trip and all, and I just need to rest." "Trace." Her lips quivered and her voice cracked. "Please, I'm okay. Please, Bill." "Hey, it's okay. You can tell me. I don't want you to go home if you're not okay." Liz clamped her lower lip with her teeth and her finger tangled in her hair again. "I'm not okay. I'm such a mess. Why did I make such a mess of everything?" I tried to calm her down, but she kept talking, mostly berating herself. "This is the happiest 4 hours I've had in a year? Maybe more than that? And I can't even hold myself together long enough to drive home. I can't pretend that watching you walk through the door and wave goodbye hurts more than anything that's happened since I saw you leave the first time. I'm so damned afraid I'm going to ruin this tiny chance, and that's exactly what I'm doing now. And you'll see what a damn mess I am. And yet you're so well put together. How can you love me if I'm so?" Her eyes widened as she realized what she'd said. "Oh, no. I didn't mean I don't expect anything from you. I promise, Bill. But I can't help how I feel. I love you. I've missed you so much. And I know I'm acting like a weird little freak right now, and I'm sorry. God, I'm sorry again. I'm going to go. Liz, no. Wait, what? I don't want you to go. Get out of the car, go inside, and have a drink to calm your nerves. Hell, you can stay the night if you need to." She shook her head. "Bill, I can't, please. Please, if I go over there, I've missed you too. You have no idea how much." "Yes, I dated, and some of them were good. But they weren't you. Even the ones that were good, a couple that were even maybe great, weren't you." I took the hand that had gone from tangling her hair to almost pulling it out and squeezed it in mine. When I was listing all the good things that happened, I missed one thing. You didn't sleep with him. I don't think either of us could have found a way to go back to that, but you didn't. And I think we can. I took a deep breath. No, I know we can if we really try this time. So please, come inside and stay the night. Not in my bed. I'm not saying that, but just so I know you'll be safe. Her jaw dropped and she whispered, "Oh, okay," a pause. "Are you serious? What you said about missing me and trying to find a way back? Really?" I nodded. "I'll get your stuff. Go on inside. Make yourself at home." And she did. More than that, she made my house a home, a real home. Not right away, of course. 4 hours in the car is not enough time to overcome all the differences or catch up on all the things in our lives. But it was a start. We didn't rush things. We went to counseling. Did all the smart things we wanted to do when we were trying to repair our relationship the first time around. It turned out to be a lot easier when we weren't taking constant fire from random assholes. After a few weeks, we found ourselves in the same bed. After about a week, we finally got out of that bed for longer than it took to eat or shower. I lost my beard, she kept her hair. Every once in a while, someone recognizes us. But these days, it's more of a cause for amusement than another rock trying to crush us. Hell, we were even spotted together on our honeymoon, and we posed for the proverbial picture a few times, albeit with some variations. Sometimes Tracy was showered with attention while I looked at my phone, and other times a much more muscular Chuck was chatting up a gorgeous woman in a bikini while Tracy examined her nails. Yes, Know Your Meme still has our pages on it, but the internet has moved on. I don't really know what exactly is in vogue right now. Tracy and I destroyed all of our social media accounts shortly before we broke up. I don't think either of us missed them. I certainly don't. Every once in a while, I think of them and wonder if we could have stayed together somehow, but I don't see a way. Tracy and Bill just couldn't make it work. Tracy realized how badly she had screwed up, but couldn't realize how much pain she had inadvertently caused until she felt it directly. A lot was going wrong in Bill's life even before the shooting, and he saw no way out. The added stress was too much. No, Tracy and Bill would never make it through. But Liz and Will were different people. Liz is more down-to-earth and sympathetic. Will is psychologically more solid and confident. I'm not trying to tempt fate, but I meant what I said. I'm sure we'll make it work. The baby bouncing on my lap and the baby growing and my loving wife's belly as I write these lines show how confident I am in that belief. I said at the beginning that my life would be so much easier if Tracy were dead. That may be true, but easier and better are two different things. I can't imagine a better life than the one I have now, and I can't imagine better versions of the two of us. Sometimes better hurts, but in my case, I'll always take it over easier. First up in my afterword, a recommendation for a sequel. I've mentioned One Against before and how much I like his work. For 2 years now, he's been posting complex, emotional, and intense stories here, and almost all of them are tied together within the overall Wonderland universe. Wonderland is about to end, and Consensual Adults only has just started. Catch up, take your pick, look for something you'll enjoy. There's a lot to like. In particular, I'd like to draw your attention to The Light Between the Trees, which is also about the aftermath of a shooting and a survivor trying to cope in the internet age. That story goes in a very different direction and in much darker places than this one, and has earned a spot in the Don't Agree, Don't Wish category, so be warned. And to celebrate the end of the Wonderland series, he's hosting a Midnight at Lost and Found event this October. Expect an entry in that book from me. The beta reading and proofreading of this book was done by Constries. They offered some great suggestions, as did On Against. Funny enough, the ones I took from One Against helped me hit a few sections of the story harder, and the ones from Constries curved some of my ahem excesses. I'm immensely grateful to both of them. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.